Of all the possessions that people take pride in, cars have to be considered close to the top of the list. Some people are even accused of loving their cars more than they love their partners. With that in mind, if you owned a truly unique or unusual vehicle, why would you leave it locked away from the world for years or abandoned in an unusual place? That was the fate that befell the incredible cars you'll see in this video. If you want a car that's nothing like any other vehicle in the world, your best option is to build one yourself. That's what Belarusian Alexander Dlatovsky did in the 1950s, and the end product was this delightful Java 250. The car is just an automobile frame built around an old Java motorcycle. The sidecar which came with the bike has been expanded upon to combine the two things into a unique whole. A one-door car body has been grafted onto the side of the bike, with a luggage space on top for storage. There's even an ashtray and a fan for the convenience of the driver. Dlatovsky was hoping his idea would be picked up for mass production. But although it turned a lot of heads at an ENEA exhibition, the prototype was sadly never taken any further. After nearly 70 years in storage, the Java 250 is now in the hands of a new owner, who intends to knock off the rust and completely restore it. These days, we all know Toyota as one of the largest automobile manufacturing companies in the whole world. But if it wasn't for the release of the Toyota AA in 1936, the company might not have had a future at all. Back then, they were known as Toyota instead of Toyota, and they were better known for producing textiles than cars. Their AA vehicle was made from cannibalized parts of other cars. It had a Chevrolet engine, a Ford chassis, and bodywork copied from Chrysler. There were once more than 1,000 models of the car in Japan, mostly bought by government officials, thus raising the company's profile. When the Second World War broke out, though, they were scrapped and used for steel. All of them were thought to be lost, but now, one lone rusted model has turned up in Siberia, of all places. It seems that the car had spent its whole life working on a remote farm before being stored in a barn when it was past the point of use. Only when the original owner's grandson did some research on the rusty old car in the barn did he realize its true value and uniqueness. Now it's on display at a museum in the Netherlands. Auctioneers assessing the value of an abandoned property in Scotland got the surprise of their lives when they took a look inside a warehouse which stood on the grounds. It was full of rare Land Rover SUV models, some of which had been hidden from the light for decades. There were 20 of the vintage vehicles in total, one of which was a snow track that had starred in the television show Salvage Squad years previously. This type of Land Rover exists for one sole purpose: preparing ski slopes for skiers. It hadn't had a chance to do its job for a long time. Also worthy of note was a Land Rover Series 2A Lightweight, which according to the mileometer had hardly ever moved at all. It's in almost pristine condition, save for the canvas canopy, which appears to be a homemade replacement for the original. A check of the license plate revealed that it was used for military parades in the past. The other stars of the collection were a Rover Defender 110, which has mammoth lifting capabilities, and an SRV-1 airfield tractor packing 600 horsepower in its 12-cylinder engine. They're all in good working order, so hopefully they'll be back up and running soon. An amphibious car that could move through water as well as it does on land is the kind of thing you might expect to see in a James Bond movie. But back in the 1960s, Russian designers were trying to make it a reality. Designer Nikolevich Melnichenko of the GSKB Chelyabinsk tractor plant was obsessed with the idea and devoted all of his spare time to working on a prototype. The result was a vehicle called Argo, which comes with 8 wheels and an innovative hydraulic system which converts the energy created by the spinning wheels to the engine shaft. The aluminum casing is hermetically sealed to keep the interior dry while the car is underwater, with the hinge between the two sections of casing acting almost like gills. It looks bulkier than it is. It only weighs 1.5 tons. Sadly for Melnichenko, it looks like he never completed the build process. There's no sign an engine was ever installed beneath the hood. When Melnichenko passed away, ownership of the top-secret car passed down his family until now. His grandson is listing it for auction in the hope that a designer who wants a new challenge will buy it and finish the work. A collector named Ralph got a lucky break when he went searching for a rare British sports car. He found 5 of them at once, sitting on shelves in an American warehouse. Ralph was looking for a 2.5-liter V8 Daimler SP250 for his collection, and had been scouring the internet for years. One day, his prayers were answered by an American gentleman who said he had a whole set of them sitting in his warehouse, and he had no further need for them. During their peak years, these cars were considered the best British sports car on the market, but only around 2,600 of them were ever made, starting in 1959 and then finishing production in 1964. That makes them very rare and very valuable to the right collector. Despite the fact he could have made far more money for them, the owner of the cars decided to sell the whole lot for $64,000, giving the reason that he was getting more than he paid for them in the 1960s, and he was glad they were going to a good home. Ralph may only have wanted one Daimler at first, but now he's got a whole fleet. If you've ever visited England, you'll know that they do their driving a little differently to the rest of us. Specifically, they drive on the right-hand side of the road. That means that when a British buyer wants to import a car that's been made abroad, they have to have it specially adapted for right-hand driving. If the car they're importing is already one of a limited range, that right-hand drive feature can make it totally unique. We believe that's the case with this old Soviet-era Volga GAZ-21, built in 1966. It was built in the Gorky automobile plant as one of only 100 ever made, of which a mere 15 were sold in Britain. This is likely the last of them still in existence, and it's in near pristine condition because it's been in an abandoned dry hangar since 1982. The owner of the hangar is unknown, and the car was only located when rental payments on the hangar stopped, and so officials turned up to repossess it. Despite all those years off the road, its engine started up immediately, and it was driven out of the hangar. All it needs is a little attention to its paintwork, and it will be as good as new. If you had an old car in your garage, you were thinking of restoring but never got around to it, how long would you leave it there? 2 years? 5? 10 at most? How about almost 50 years? That's how long an American farmer held onto this BMW 328, little knowing that he was hiding a priceless piece of racing history from the world. The farmer bought the car back in 1971, but over time it accumulated rust and filth to the point it's barely recognizable from its racing prime. Way back in 1937, the car took part in the world-famous 24-hour Le Mans race, driven by Prince Bira of Siam, the country we now call Thailand. It finished in 3rd place and was 3rd in its class. It managed another 3rd place finish the next year at the Mille Miglia race, but was retired from racing later the same year after a poor performance in the 1938 Tourist Trophy. After that, it disappeared. Nobody knows how it came to be sold to the farmer as a bucket of rust years later, but the motoring world was so excited when it was found that it ended up on the cover of Auto Week magazine. Here's another car with a unique history attached to it. It's one-of-a-kind bi-turbo mid-engine BMW M1, which was purpose-built with the intention of breaking the land speed record for a car driven on liquefied gas. Harold Erdl, a racing car driver who was also a journalist, was heavily involved in the design and build of the vehicle, and was also the man behind the wheel when it hit a speed of 192 miles per hour on Volkswagen's test track in 1981. British Petroleum wanted to make the unique car the face of its advertising campaign for liquefied gas, which, at the time, racing was being considered as an alternative to regular fuel. A pair of KKK K26 turbochargers were installed on the vehicle to assist with the record attempt, with the power increased to 410 horsepower. While Erdl personally verified the speed he reached, it was never officially confirmed. And as Erdl tragically lost his life in a plane crash a few months later, he never got to try again. By 1993, the car was owned by an English doctor and stayed hidden away in storage until earlier this year, when it passed to an auction house in the hope it would find a proud new owner. When factories close suddenly, the things inside them can easily be forgotten about when the doors are locked shut for the last time. When a textile production factory in Philadelphia shut down, one of the items trapped inside was this fantastic 1927 Packard. It was already secondhand when the factory owner bought it during the 1940s, and he then drove it to and from work every day for more than 10 years. That journey must have been a short trip, because there are only 10,000 miles on the clock of the Packard 6 sedan. By the late 50s, it had mechanical issues, and so it was parked up inside the factory for the final time, staying there after the closure of the factory in 1974. The vehicle still has its original roll-down window blinds and wooden steering wheel, which is unusual for a Packard of this age. It's now going to be fully restored, so it may still be on the road when it reaches its 100th birthday in a few years. This car is so unique that it almost defies description, but it just about qualifies as a Buick Streamliner. It's an exhibition model that was conceived and built by the designer Norman E. Timms in 1948. Timms crafted beautiful aluminum curves around a steel frame, taking inspiration from the Mercedes-Benz W25 and the Auto Union Type C, both of which were popular racing cars of the era. At 17 feet long, the car almost looks like a shiny torpedo with wheels. Under the hood is a Buick V8 engine, allowing for a maximum speed of 120 miles per hour. In total, Timms spent $10,000 on putting it all together. We know that a man named Jim Davis bought it from Timms in 1952, and that Davis used to drive it around California's Manhattan Beach regularly, but after that, the trail goes dark. It eventually turned up in a hangar in the Californian desert in 2002, heavily decayed. The story has a happy ending, though. The car was restored by its new owner, David Cruz, who won prizes for his work when he displayed it at the Amelia Island Elegance Competition in 2012. This next car wasn't so much found as unveiled, and we can guarantee no other car in the world looks like it, nor ever will. The designer of the vehicle, who wishes to remain nameless, has constructed this unusual blue vehicle from pieces taken from no less than 17 other cars, and put them all together himself. He used to work at a car scrapyard, which gave him plenty of access to the parts he needed. The chassis is officially registered as a Chevrolet 1939, but it doesn't much resemble one. Only the fenders, hood, and grille from the Chevrolet remain. The 8-cylinder engine has come out of a GMC truck from 1985, the automatic transmission from a 1982 Chevrolet, and the rear fins once belonged to a 1961 Cadillac. Inside the cabin, the majority of the dashboard fittings are from a 1984 Ford Thunderbird, but the electrics behind them are from a 1985 Oldsmobile. The comfortable seating used to be inside a 1984 Pontiac Freebird. It's certainly an original creation, but is it beautiful? We're not sure. The designer hopes someone will part with $25,000 to buy it from him, so we wish him good luck. Usually, when Aston Martin designs a new car, it's a big deal and a guaranteed success. There are a couple of notable exceptions to that rule, though, and none more so than the Aston Martin Bulldog. Built in 1980, this wedge-shaped hypercar was intended to exceed 230 miles per hour and make the statement that Aston Martin could do power as well as luxury. It failed. Making the car super aerodynamic also made it a little ugly, with a compartment of 5 headlights and the hood not helping matters much. Also, at only 3.5 feet tall, it looks and feels squat and flat. The 5.3-liter V8 engine with its 2 turbochargers was capable of 700 horsepower, which was incredible for the era, but it never made it past 190 miles per hour. It was too heavy. With the car having been poorly received, the initial plan to make 25 of them was canceled. And so we were left with this solitary example. It was sold to a Middle Eastern investor for $150,000 in 1981, and has occasionally shown up at car shows since then, but is now back on the market if anyone wants to buy it. Apparently, it now has television screens in the back of the seats. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.